The old Briarwood house crouched at the edge of hollow pines, its jagged roofline slicing into the low-hanging clouds like broken teeth. No one went near it, not anymore. The walls, once a proud, pale stone, were now blotched with time and something darker. Something that never quite washed away. Its windows stared out, sealed tight, like the house itself was holding its breath. Waiting. Asterisk locals don't talk about the Briarwoods in daylight. Their name, if spoken, it all slips out in whispers when the moon is high. When the fog curls like fingers down the empty streets and the street lamps flicker for reasons no one can explain, they weren't just an old family. They were a scar, a deep, ugly mark stitched into the heart of this place, pulsing with secrets too heavy to stay buried. Asterisk no one agrees when it all started. Some say the decay crept in, slowly like rot beneath the floorboards. Others swear it began the night the Briarwood child vanished without a trace. But all agree. After that, nothing was ever the same. Illnesses, shadows moving where they shouldn't, and those faint echoing sounds, chanting, carried on the wind from behind the house's locked doors. Asterisk, tonight the mist is thicker than ever. The town clock groans its midnight song, and the cold presses closer. Like the whole place is holding its breath. It's time to peel back the rotten layers of the Briarwood legacy to find out what they were hiding. And why the house still watches, still waits, for someone foolish enough to come looking. Asterisk, but before we go any deeper, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it? There. Asterisk, no one remembers exactly when Damien Holloway arrived. Only that the town changed after he did. He wasn't like other men. There was something in the way he spoke, calm, measured, but sharp, like every word was chosen to cut. They say he came with nothing but old books and stranger ideas. Some whispered he studied forgotten languages. Others swore he carried relics that should have stayed buried. Asterisk, the Holloway estate rose from the outskirts, cold stone and black iron swallowing the hill where it stood. But long before Damien laid the first brick, that land was different. Sacred, they said. A place where earth and shadow twisted together, where even the oldest maps left the ground blank, as if the land itself refused to be claimed. Asterisk people warned him. They begged him not to build there. But ambition drowns out caution. And soon the house stood tall, its windows glinting like watchful eyes, its halls already heavy with silence. At night, strange lights pulsed behind the curtains. Low voices, carried through the wind chanting words that didn't belong to this time, or this world. Asterisk, the Holloway name grew like a dark stain over the town. Wealth came quickly, but so did the fear. Damien's only son, Lucian, inherited more than just the house. He inherited the whispers, the locked doors, the unanswered questions. Cold, distant, always watching, Lucian rarely left the grounds. And when he did, his eyes seemed to follow you, like they saw something you couldn't. Asterisk, then, the vanishings. Began, first a maid, then a gardener, even distant relatives. Gone without a word, without a trace. Explanations fell like ashes, talk of illness, of travel. But the truth, it lingers heavy. Just beneath the surface, asterisk, and tonight, as the fog curls low and the clock strikes midnight, it waits. For someone curious enough to look, brave enough to listen. Asterisk, there's a house hidden beyond the old Pine Hollow road, wrapped in vines. And fog, where the trees grow too thick and the shadows fall too long. They say the Ashcroft estate has stood there for nearly 2 centuries, a place where wealth, grief, and whispered superstition are woven so tightly. It's hard to tell them apart. Asterisk, it started, they say, with Victor Ashcroft, a man of impossible charm and unsettling curiosity. Victor wasn't interested in the simple life of merchants or landowners. His eyes were fixed on the forbidden, the hidden, the ancient. Some called him a scholar. Something far worse. They say he collected books no priest would bless, learned languages no man should speak, and built his fortune not with sweat, but with whispered promises made beneath blood moons. Asterisk, Victor's gatherings were the stuff of legend. Candlelit. Halls, floors etched with symbols older than memory, and voices chanting softly into the night. People from far beyond town arrived in dark carriages, their faces hidden, their eyes hollow. The church warned of dark forces. They urged people to stay away. Fear has a strange companion, curiosity, and the two danced through the town. Like smoke. Asterisk, then came the signs. Livestock twisted and torn in the fields. Blue flames flickering in the manor windows long after midnight. A sickness in the air, one that crept beneath doors and settled into bones. The Ashcroft name, once whispered with envy, became a shadow hanging over every street. Asterisk, but the darkest chapter belonged to Victor's son, Elias Calder. Smarter, hungrier. Elias rarely left the estate. The few workers who dared stay spoke of locked rooms. Strange markings pulsing on the stone walls at night. Symbols that shifted like they were alive. The woods grew thicker, wilder, as if nature itself recoiled from the house. Paths vanished. Birds never sang. Asterisk, even the church grew quiet. The pastor refused to speak, their name afraid that even acknowledging the Ashcrofts might awaken something better left sleeping. Asterisk, and then came her. Asterisk, Evelyn. Elise's young wife. Soft-spoken. Beautiful. Trapped. Asterisk, she was last seen walking the fog-choked gardens at dusk, her pale figure drifting like a ghost between the trees. Some say she looked frightened, like the house itself watched her. When dawn broke, all they found was her torn scarf, tangled on a thorn bush, and a trail of footsteps that led deep into the woods, vanished. After that, no one approached the estate. But even now, when the wind rises, when the mist curls, lo, you can still see it, that towering house, staring out from the trees. Waiting, asterisk, and tonight, as the clock strikes midnight maybe, just maybe, it waits for you. Asterisk, they say. The old Hawthorne estate was never built to house the living, only to trap the forgotten. Tone, it stands alone, now half swallowed by creeping vines and fog that never seems to lift. Most in town refuse to even speak of it. But for those who still remember, the story is far from over. Asterisk, after the disappearance of Margaret Hawthorne, the manor's grand halls rotted into silence. Her husband Edmund, once known for his sharp mind and colder heart, withdrew entirely from the world. Neighbors whispered that grief had broken him, but grief doesn't explain. The shadows. Asterisk, servants that stayed behind fewer with each passing month spoke of strange noises drifting through the corridors, weeping that clawed its way through locked doors. Candles, burning long after midnight, their flames flickering as if afraid of something just beyond the walls. The estate grew heavier with each year, as if it was breathing. Watching, asterisk, the Hawthorne name, once etched in stone as a mark of wealth, slowly became a curse, spoken only behind closed doors. Tragedy followed the family like a shroud, there. Home transforming into a place that pulsed with quiet menace. Asterisk, it wasn't long before the land itself seemed to reject life. Birds avoided the trees. Stray animals would rather starve than cross the estate's boundaries. Even the grass withered near the house patches of soil, turning brittle and black as if scorched by something unseen. Asterisk and the children. They were never the same after Margaret vanished. Asterisk, they walked through town with empty eyes. Their laughter, when it came, was brittle like glass cracking under pressure. Some swore their shadows moved differently, lingering a little too long after they passed. Others claimed to hear faint melodies drifting through the night low, mournful notes played on forgotten instruments. The tune sent shivers down spines, a sound both beautiful and broken. Asterisk, as the years dragged on, the church grew quieter, its influence eaten away by fear. Even the pastor avoided the Hawthorne name, unwilling to draw the manor's attention. No one dared trespass. No one dared look too closely. But the house waits. They say the walls still whisper her name when the fog settles thick on the ground. That if you stand close enough, you'll hear music weaving through the trees, and footsteps following when no one is there. Asterisk, and maybe tonight, if the wind rises, the house will finally reveal what it's been hiding all along. Asterisk. Some houses carry stories, others carry warnings, and then there are those that carry curses. Asterisk, the Hollowmere estate was never just another forgotten mansion on the outskirts of town. It was a place wrapped in silence, drenched in shadows, and feared by all who knew the name Hollowmere. Asterisk, it began generations ago. With Victor Hollowmere, man whose hunger for knowledge led him far beyond the boundaries of reason. They say he uncovered things buried for a reason. Ancient rites, lost symbols. Promises whispered by things that should never be heard. Asterisk, the townspeople kept their distance. The church bells rang, but their prayers faltered whenever the old estate loomed in sight. Rumors clung to the hollow Mere family like the creeping fog talk of secret gatherings under moonlight, the hidden brotherhood bound by blood shadows. In silence. Asterisk, for years, the family lived sealed behind heavy doors. Until the night tragedy found them. Asterisk, Victor's eldest son, Sebastian, vanished into the mist one cold October evening. By dawn, he was found near the estate's forgotten orchard, unmoving, eyes wide with terror, lips frozen mid-scream, his body untouched, yet whatever made him human was gone. Asterisk, doctors called it illness of the mind. The villagers knew better. From that day, the manor changed. At night, faint whispers curled through the empty corridors, voices too quiet to understand, but impossible to ignore. Lantern light flickered behind locked windows, though no soul was seen inside. Forest that hugged the estate thickened, wild and unruly, swallowing the roads and choking out the sun. Asterisk, even the animals. They understood birds refused to land. Stray dogs whimpered and turned away. Not even the bravest hunter stepped beyond the crumbling gates. Asterisk, those servants who remained spoke of shifting shadows on the walls, of old symbols carved into stone, bleeding when touched by moonlight, of unseen footsteps pacing the halls long after midnight, and in their eyes, fear that words could not hide. Asterisk, the hollow Mere name became a whispered warning. Neighbors no longer walked the roads near. The estate. The church's sermons avoided their name entirely, as if speaking it aloud might summon the very thing they feared. Asterisk, some say the family fell victim to their own sins. Others believe they simply welcomed something darker inside. Asterisk, but the house still waits. Watching. Waiting. And those foolish enough to seek the truth behind its doors soon realize. Some secrets aren't meant to be uncovered. Some families disappear quietly. Others leave behind echoes that never fade. Asterisk, the Ashburn estate, wasn't supposed to last this long. Its walls sagged under the weight of forgotten sins. Its windows stare blankly over fields that should have swallowed it whole by now. But the house endures, and so do the whispers. Asterisk, it was said, the Ashburn bloodline was cursed from the beginning. But it wasn't until that final winter's night the curse truly bared its teeth. Asterisk, the snow fell heavy, choking the roads and sealing the estate off from the world. Inside, what remained of the Ashburn family gathered under the crumbling roof, faces pale, eyes hollow, the weight of years of secrets pressing on every breath. Asterisk, old Victor Ashburn. The patriarch called them together, though no one knew if it was duty or desperation. The great hall was cold, the fire barely burning, shadows stretching long across the faded portraits of ancestors who watched and waited. Asterisk, the servants, those few who hadn't fled, spoke in terrified whispers of what was planned that night, a ritual, old, forbidden, the kind only whispered about in the dark corners of ancient texts. They say the floor was carved with unfamiliar symbols, strange and alive under the candlelight. That flickered, unnaturally. Asterisk, what happened next was never clear. Some say screams echoed from the manor until dawn. Others claim there was nothing but silence, suffocating, final silence. Within days, the family was gone. Some vanished, leaving behind shattered furniture and cryptic scribbles scrawled across the walls.
Ow.
Fragments of sentences repeating. The same words over and over. The price is paid. The watcher waits. Asterisk, the estate has stood empty ever since. Rotting, yet never truly abandoned. Asterisk, locals still speak of lights dancing behind broken windows. Soft music drifting from nowhere. And shadows shifting just beyond the trees. Asterisk, most avoid the old road altogether. But some, the curious, the foolish, still come close, and they always leave knowing the same thing. The Ashburn family's story never ended. It's still watching, still waiting for the next chapter to begin. Some places rot, not just in wood and stone, but in memory. Asterisk, the hollow Mere estate should have been forgotten by now. Collapsing ruins swallowed by tangled forest and creeping fog, but its name still lingers, like a bruise that refuses to fade. Asterisk, for decades, the mansion has crouched at the edge of town, its jagged silhouette cutting against the sky like the bones of something long dead, or something waiting to wake up. Asterisk locals speak of it only behind closed doors. Children dare each other to touch the rusted gates. Most run before their fingers get close. Hunters claim their dogs whimper and refuse to cross the tree line, their hackles rising as if something unseen watches from the shadows. Asterisk, curious outsiders, ghost hunters. Historians' fools sometimes come, drawn by the rumors and the promise of answers buried beneath decades of rot and silence. But they never leave the same. Asterisk, those few who return speak of cold that sinks into your bones and refuses to leave, of shapes twisting at the edges of vision, of whispered voices calling your name when no one is there. Asterisk, the Hollowmere family. Their name is etched into the house, into the soil, into the fear that chokes the town even now. A family torn apart by secrets, their tragedy soaked into every stone and broken window. Asterisk, it began when Evelyn Hollowmere vanished, swallowed by the house, they say after that. Servants disappeared, first one, then another, till the halls echoed with nothing but silence and creaking floors. Asterisk, the house became more than haunted. It became alive. It watches, it waits, and its hunger never fades. Asterisk, and now, as the night presses in and shadows stretch longer, we pull back the veil to uncover the sorrow, the fear, and the terror that was never meant to be spoken aloud. Asterisk, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? How much darkness surrounds you? Asterisk, some families carry secrets. The hollow brooks, their secrets never stayed buried. They crawl, they breathe, and they watch. Asterisk, it started with whispers, soft, uneasy. Things that crept through town like smoke no one wanted to name. The Hollowbrook estate, rotting at the edge of the woods. Windows shuttered, doors bolted, but the shadows inside, they never rested. Asterisk, Samuel, the old groundskeeper, was the first to speak, his voice shaking, eyes wide with the kind of fear that stains your bones. He spoke of nights when the earth itself seemed to hum, of voices rising from the cellar, not prayers, but something twisted, ancient. Words that made the walls bleed and the air tighten like a fist around your throat. Asterisk, the townsfolk brushed it off at first, till Samuel vanished. Asterisk, no suitcase, no goodbye, just gone. Asterisk, that's when the stories truly bled through the cracks, of hidden tunnels winding beneath the estate, of sealed crypts older than the town itself, crypts lined with symbols that pulsed and flickered when caught in the corner of your eye, symbols drawn in something far darker than ink. Asterisk, they say. The Hollowbrooks weren't just a family, they were followers. A secret brotherhood bound to something ancient, something that feeds in silence and stains the land around them. But it wasn't just symbols and shadows. There was Agnes, barely 17, working as a maid. Inside those decaying halls, screams split the autumn night like glass shattering, and then nothing. Asterisk, her room was untouched, but the air, it reeked. Incense, and something far fouler, a scent that curled in your lungs, and whispered promises you didn't want to understand. Asterisk, the search party. They found nothing, except for the cellar walls, scrawled with symbols burned in ash, shifting, twisting, alive. If you stared too long, Asterisk, the Hollowbrook estate still stands, empty, or so they say. Asterisk, but the lights. They flicker behind cracked curtains, figures move just beyond the windows. When the wind dies down, chanting begins again. Asterisk, soft, ancient, hungry asterisk, so tell me, would you dare listen closer? Or would you pray? It never notices you. Asterisk, some places don't just hold memories, they hold things much darker. Asterisk, the Briarwood estate was one of them, standing like a rotting scar at the edge of town. Windows black, its doors sealed, but the land itself, poisoned, like it never forgot. Asterisk, locals whispered about what happened inside, how the halls filled with hooded figures, chanting low, cold words that scraped the walls like claws. Candles flickered, shadows twisted, and somewhere beneath it all, sound of bones clinking. It's like a warning. Asterisk, they said the church tried to help, sent their bravest, but the manor swallowed them whole. Doors locked behind them, witnesses vanished. Even the air grew heavy. So heavy, it crushed the prayers right out of your lungs. Asterisk, it wasn't long before the fear bled beyond those walls. Asterisk, Thomas Reed, the old caretaker, vanished next. Last seen near the Crooked Woods, muttering about burning eyes, watching from the trees. The search party found his lantern still glowing, resting on dead leaves. But Thomas, gone, like he was never there. Then the land changed. Crops withered, livestock found. Torn. With symbols carved into their skin, no one could explain. Children whispered of shadows lurking at the tree line, eyes in the dark, watching, waiting. Asterisk, and even now, if you stand close enough, you'll hear it, the chanting, the rattling bones, asterisk, the promise that the Briarwood estate never lets go, asterisk. Some families carry their legacy with pride. Others bury it beneath the floorboards and pray it stays hidden. The Hollowmere estate was one of those places. The house still stands, broken, decaying, but its darkness that never left. The townsfolk don't speak its name now. They cross the street, whisper prayers, and keep their eyes low when passing its rusted gates. Asterisk, but Mary Hollow. She saw what lived behind those walls. Asterisk in her old torn diary. Her words shake with fear. She wrote of a night. The grand hall alive with chanting. Shadows dancing beneath a blood-red moon. Cloaked figures circling an altar. Altar. A child. Bound. Trembling. Eyes wide with terror. Asterisk Mary saw faces she recognized. People trusted in town. And among them, Alexander Hollowmere himself. Lips moving in fevered worship. Eyes empty. Lost to the madness. Asterisk. She ran. Somehow escaped those walls. But her final words scribbled in the margins chilled the bone. Asterisk, the curse it feeds. It never stops, and it won't. Till blood repays blood. Asterisk, no one knows what happened to the others. But even now, the wind carries whispers from the estate. Asterisk and the shadows. Asterisk they are, still watching. Asterisk, asterisk, some places forget their ghosts. Hollowmere House never had that luxury. Asterisk it. Clings to the screams. The vanished. The blood that never washed clean. Asterisk, in 1874, the youngest Hollowmere child, Evelyn, slipped into the gardens at dusk. Her pale dress lost among the creeping mist. She never came back. Asterisk, the search was desperate, hopeless, only a trail of small footprints remained, leading to the old willow, the tree the town feared more than the house itself. Asterisk, no one dared speak of the stories, of what was buried beneath its roots, of the chamber hidden deep in the house's west wing, sealed by locks no key could open, guarded by whispers and shadows that pressed against your chest, stealing your breath, your courage. Asterisk, the house has a hunger, the kind that waits, that watches, that never lets go. Evelyn's disappearance wasn't the end. It was just the house calling for its next offering. They say the Hollowmere house doesn't rot. It waits. After Evelyn vanished, her father, Richard Hollowmere, locked himself away. The grand halls that once echoed with laughter turned cold. The walls whispered. The shadows thickened. Only a few servants stayed behind, silent, afraid, watching the doors that never stayed shut, listening to the voices that weren't supposed to be there. The townspeople spoke of a ritual, something old, forbidden. Richard was desperate. They say he made a deal with things that don't speak, things that only hunger. Asterisk, that winter. The ground trembled beneath the house. Asterisk screams carried on the wind. The garden withered. The walls cracked. Asterisk, but the darkness? It stayed. Some say it's hidden inside. A relic. A book that bleeds when opened. Asterisk whispers when touched, and remembers every soul it's claimed. No one goes near Hollowmere now. The house isn't empty. It's watching. Asterisk, they say. Hollowmere House doesn't burn. It screams. The fire that devoured the east wing came without warning. No lightning. No accident. Just flames hungry, wild racing across ancient wood and shattered glass like it had been waiting. Asterisk, but the real horror? The whispers started after the fire. The townspeople had always feared that place. Asterisk, the sealed box. Hidden inside, iron clasps, tokens. From rituals that were never meant to be spoken of, asterisk those who went looking for it, vanished. No trace, just empty halls. Flickering candlelight, and eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They say the house still breathes, the walls, they listen. Asterisk the shadows. They remember, even now, Prayers can't keep it out. The curse isn't a story. Asterisk, it's a stain. On the land, on every soul who dares to get close. Asterisk, and when the wind is still. Asterisk, if you listen, you'll hear it. The house, calling for the next one. Some places don't forget. They wait. Asterisk, years after Hollowmere House burned. Its ruins slept beneath ivy and creeping shadows. Nature swallowed the paths, but not the whispers. The story stayed dark, patient, unfinished. Asterisk, they warned him not to go, but Nathaniel Crane never listened. Obsessed with the manor's history, he hunted for what the fire missed. Asterisk, old letters, burnt pages, forgotten diaries, fragments of a cursed legacy buried in ash, and then found it. Cold, heavy, untouched by flame. A black pendant, twisted like a serpent strangling a cross. Asterisk, the moment he held it. The air changed, the silence. Thickened. Asterisk, the house noticed. It wasn't just ruins, it was waiting. Asterisk, and Nathaniel. Asterisk, he wasn't the first. But he might be the last. The manor wasn't empty. It was watching. Nathaniel. Crane had heard the story's whispers of curses, blood debts, and shadows that moved when no one was there. But warnings never stopped the curious or the foolish. Asterisk, inside the ruins, silence pressed on his chest like invisible hands. The floor groaned beneath his steps. The walls seemed to breathe. It wasn't just a house, it was a trap. Asterisk, beneath cracked floorboards, he found it. A journal. Old, leather-bound. Ink faded with time, but the words still bled fear. Asterisk, rituals. Sacrifices. A hidden chamber sealed with ancient symbols. A family who traded their souls for power. And something buried below that should never be woken. But curiosity is louder than caution. Asterisk, guided by the journal's map. Crane descended into the manor's depths. Asterisk, stone walls closed in. Air turned sharp and cold. There it was, a door. Marked with a serpent strangling across, the seal of the Winscotts, the warning. Ignored. His hand trembled as he pushed it open. Darkness poured out like smoke. Asterisk, the room inside. Asterisk. And now? So was the thing they tried to keep, locked away. Asterisk. Shadows didn't just watch him, they followed him. Nathaniel. Crane never believed in curses until the day he stepped into the Winscott Manor. Beneath crumbling walls and rotting floors, he found the truth buried in the dark. A pendant. Cold. Heavy. Alive. Asterisk, a serpent strangling across, shent deep. Like a warning carved into time itself. Asterisk, the moment he touched it, the house changed, the air thickened. The silence whispered, asterisk, and the shadows.
Asterisk.
They moved. Asterisk at night. Streams bled into waking. Figures cloaked in black, altars stained with old blood. Asterisk. Eyes watching from the corners of forgotten rooms. Asterisk, the pendant pulsed. Faintly in his hand, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. It wasn't over. The curse wasn't done. Asterisk, and now. Neither was the darkness. It started with symbols, scratched into the dust across his floor, shifting, watching, waiting. Nathaniel Crane never wrote them, but they knew his name. Asterisk on his desk. Letters appeared familiar, handwriting twisted into something wrong. Each word whispered a warning of what was coming, and the shadows listened. The townspeople did too. Their stares lingered longer. Their words quiet and sharp. Asterisk, he's cursed. Asterisk, he went near the Winscott place. Asterisk, no one comes back. The same. They were right. The manor's darkness followed him, seeped into his skin, refused to let go. Asterisk, and deeper still. Crane uncovered them, the veil of shadows. Asterisk, A. Secret buried beneath generations of lies. Asterisk, the Winscotts. Inner circle, bound by blood. Guardians of ancient rights and forbidden power. They moved in silence, erased the doubters. Asterisk twisted the town, itself into their web of fear. Asterisk. And now, they were watching him too. Asterisk, the question was, how long before Crane vanished like the rest? At Asterisk, the shadows weren't just watching him, they were waiting to swallow him whole. Asterisk with every step deeper into the Winscott curse. Nathaniel Crane felt the walls closing in. Eyes unseen followed. Whispers curled around him like smoke cold. Accusing, patient. The line between hunter and hunted was gone, and the darkness. It wanted him next. Asterisk in the manor's forgotten corners. Crane unearthed the final pieces letters between. Jonathan Winscott and a faceless figure known only as the Watcher. Asterisk, the words were cryptic. Sacrifices, guardianship. Asterisk, a warning. If the pact shattered, the curse would bleed beyond the family, consuming everything. But it was already too late. The manor spoke to him now. Asterisk, in the creaking floors, in the sigh of the cold walls, in the dreams that bled into waking. Asterisk, Crane's journal ended the same way he would abruptly. Swallowed by the dark. No trace, no escape. Asterisk, only silence. And the feeling that the shadows were still watching, waiting. Asterisk, the shadows never left Winscott Manor. They simply waited. Asterisk, Nathaniel. Crane's disappearance was just another secret swallowed by the rotting walls and whispering trees. Asterisk, asterisk. Locals still speak of that night of faint light near the ruined gates. Then nothing, only silence. Only cold wind carrying a voice that was barely there pleading. Lost, already forgotten. Asterisk, years passed. But the house never slept. Glass rattled in the dead calm. A pale, unnatural glow pulsed behind broken windows. The woods around it stayed quiet. Too quiet. Hunters avoided them. Children whispered the name Winscott, like a curse. Asterisk beneath the ivy, beneath cracked stone. The manor waited. Its wounds never healed. Its secrets never stayed buried. The darkness wasn't done, and it never would be. The land never forgot what the Winscotts buried. When Reverend Thomas Greaves arrived with his team of historians, the town held its breath. Asterisk, they came with old maps, broken diaries, and stories whispered for generations. Asterisk, Greaves believed. The curse was real land. The manor's ruins still pulsed with its shadow. Asterisk digging began. Bones surfaced, shattered glass, strange relics marked with symbols no one could read. Asterisk, the ground. Bled memories, burnt herbs, sour sting of old blood. The air grew heavy. Lanterns flickered for no reason. Tools slipped from hands. And at night, the whispers came. Asterisk footsteps padded through empty tents. Soft voices chanted in the dark. The manor wasn't dead. It was waiting. And when Greaves found the hidden stairwell beneath the rotted floorboards, winding into blackness, he understood. They hadn't uncovered the past. Asterisk, they had awakened it. Asterisk, the walls were slick with damp. Etched in twisting symbols, serpents coiled around crosses, the same cursed emblem tied to the Winscott name for centuries. The deeper they pushed into the earth, the heavier the air became thick. With the stench of rot and forgotten rituals, asterisk beneath the manor, hidden from the world, they found the chamber. Its floor was a shattered mosaic of bone and black stone, pieced together like a graveyard's puzzle. At its heart, an altar loomed, scarred with stains that time could not wash away. Asterisk fragments of iron chains lay coiled like snakes across the floor. A cracked chalice, rimmed with rusted blood. Torn scraps of parchment littered the ground, their words long lost to time, yet their meaning hung heavy in the air. Asterisk, the chamber wasn't empty. It was waiting, alive, with an ancient, silent hunger. Asterisk, Reverend Greaves' voice cracked as he warned his team. The Winscotts hadn't just courted tragedy. They had bound themselves to something old, and patient, and hungry. Asterisks outside, the skeletal trees groaned in the wind. Dead branches clawed at the sky. From the crumbling manor, faint echoes drifted mournful, hymns sung by voices long buried beneath the soil. Asterisk, this was no longer history. It was a reckoning. And as Greaves stepped deeper into the shadows, he wondered, asterisk, would they uncover the truth, or become part of it? Asterisk, the legacy of despair clung to the air, heavy and unrelenting. With each step, Reverend Thomas Greaves and his team took into the manor's hidden chamber. The shadows seemed to tighten around them, suffocating and alive. The walls, once buried beneath rubble and rot, revealed faded mural serpents wrapped around crosses, hooded figures kneeling before formless shapes, faces frozen in endless silent screams. Asterisk, Greaves' fingers brushed the jagged carvings, his pulse quickening. The air pulsed with a steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of something vast and unseen. Their lanterns flickered, casting shadows that stretched far beyond their source, twisting unnaturally as if watching. waiting. Asterisk whispers drifted through the room, soft but sharp, curling like smoke through the silence. The floor was littered with remnants of forgotten rituals, rusted chains, slick with age, shards of bone, a silver chalice warped and cracked, its surface stained with something old and dark. The sharp scent of burnt herbs clung stubbornly to the cold air, as if the rituals had only just ended. Asterisk among the ruins, Greaves discovered an ancient leather-bound tome. Its brittle pages trembled in his hands, yet the ink remained clear, as though time dared not claim the words within. Asterisk a warning, promise, asterisk and perhaps. Their fate asterisk, cryptic prayers filled the brittle pages, trembling words etched in fear and regret. They spoke of a blood covenant, an ancient pact binding the Winscott family to something far older and far darker than mankind could understand. As Reverend Greaves and his team deciphered the text, the air around them shifted. Tools disappeared, reappearing in strange, impossible places. The temperature plunged, cold creeping into their bones. No fire could chase away. Asterisk at night figures lurked beyond the campfire's glow-silent shadows, watching, vanishing the moment anyone approached. The land itself seemed to breathe, pulsing with an ancient, hostile awareness. Even Greaves, a man of unwavering faith, felt the cracks forming in his resolve. Visions plagued him, hooded figures drifting through endless stone halls, their whispers stitched with grief and warning, but still, they pressed on. Then the earth shuddered. Dust rained from the chamber's ceiling as the murals seemed to shift, their painted eyes alive with malice. The whispers grew louder, no longer faint but chanting, a low, dreadful invocation that vibrated through the very bones beneath their feet. Asterisk above, the sky darkened unnaturally fast. Clouds rolled in like ink, smothering the last light of day. The manor and all its secrets were awake. Asterisk the wind howled low, carrying with it a sorrowful cry that clung to the air like smoke, broken, impossible to ignore. It wasn't just an excavation anymore. It was a slow descent into a curse that refused to stay buried. Reverend Greaves could see it in his team's eyes, the creeping dread, the weight of what they had disturbed beneath Winscott Manor. Asterisk the chamber was no mere ruin. It was a grave for bones, for forgotten rituals, for centuries of grief that bled into the stone itself. Among the shattered debris, Greaves uncovered fragile parchments, stained and brittle with age. The words, written in a trembling hand, spoke of sacrifices demanded for power, blood spilled in secret, of whispered promises to a force far older and far crueler than men could comprehend. Asterisk. As his voice echoed through the cold space, reading those warnings aloud, the ground beneath them seemed to shift. The covenant was fragile, the words warned. If broken, the darkness bound here would no longer be contained. It would rise, spilling beyond these cursed walls, devouring the town, the people, everything. Asterisk the air thickened, the floor trembled, and for the first time, even Greaves' unwavering faith faltered. Their intrusion wasn't just dangerous, it had already begun to awaken something. And it was watching. Asterisk the ground beneath. The Winscott Manor wasn't just soaked in grief, it pulsed with the weight of ancient broken promises. That night, as Greaves and his team camped near the ruins, curiosity turned to terror. Lanterns sputtered, their light choking out one by one. Shadows stretched and deepened, taking on shapes that shouldn't exist. Asterisk from the twisted forest, faint footsteps echoed. Some of the team whispered they'd seen figures, cloaked, their robes torn and ragged, drifting soundlessly between the skeletal trees. The air itself seemed to hum with whispers, crawling into their minds, twisting into promises and threats. A voice that felt both familiar and wrong. Asterisk's sleep became impossible. Fear gnawed at their nerves, unraveling every ounce of resolve. Alone beneath the stars, Greaves found himself staring at the manor. Cold wind scraped across his face and beneath the soil. He could swear he heard chanting, low, distant. Carried by the earth itself, Asterisk, what he thought was history, had revealed itself as a living nightmare. The curse wasn't some forgotten. Talit was awake, watching, waiting. Asterisk, the manor wasn't ruins. It was a trap. To seek the truth of the Winscott family was to risk being tangled in the same web of blood and shadows that had claimed so many before them. Asterisk. As the first weak light of dawn crept across the land, Greaves made his choice. They would go deeper. They would uncover it all, or be swallowed whole. Asterisk the Winscott Manor was far from finished with its dark story. Years had passed since Reverend Greaves and his team had uncovered the hidden ritual chamber beneath the crumbling estate, but the land never forgot. The ground itself still pulsed with the scars of their intrusion, like an old wound that refused to close. Asterisk the manor, choked by dead vines and skeletal trees, stood silent, a monument to generations of shadows, despair, and whispered sins. But deep beneath the rot, something stirred. An ancient hunger, awake again. Asterisk among those pulled into the manor's curse was Eleanor Winscott, the last thread in a bloodline woven with sorrow and madness. Unlike those who had run from the family name, Eleanor returned, ready to face what others feared to even whisper about. Asterisk, she arrived under a bruised gray sky, clutching an old leather journal brittle. Faded, its pages scribbled with fragmented confessions, broken warnings, and the unraveling thoughts of Winscott, women long gone. Asterisk, the moment she crossed the rusted iron gates, the air shifted. A chill slid across her skin like icy fingers. The wind carried faint voices, forgotten prayers, desperate cries, as if the dead themselves still begged for release. Asterisk, the manor loomed ahead. A jagged skeleton of broken stone and shattered glass, its windows black and hollow, watched her approach like soulless eyes. The ground groaned beneath her boots. The shadows leaned in and buried just beneath it all. Something darker waited. Asterisk, the shadows inside the crumbling Winscott. A state hid more than just dust and decay. They hid the truth. And Eleanor was done running from it. Asterisk, within the rotting walls, she found the pieces. Torn letters, faded photographs, and the remnants of rituals too dark to name. Her great-grandmother's journal spoke plainly. The Winscotts were never victims of some distant curse. They had invited the darkness in, bound it, fed it. All for power, all for survival. But now the house was hungry again. Each night bled into the next, thick with whispers that drifted through the halls. Shadows moved just beyond the candlelight. Doors creaked open without reason. The estate seemed alive, breathing, watching, waiting. Asterisk, in the garden, once a place of life. Eleanor discovered a twisted patch of roses, blackened, curled, their petals like burnt paper. Beneath them, the earth was warm, too warm, like something beneath the soil pulsed and waited to rise. Asterisk here. The line between the living and the dead wasn't just thin, it was broken. Asterisk, the journal's final pages held no comfort, only a warning. A reckoning was near. And as the last of the Winscott line, Eleanor had a choice. Asterisk, face the darkness, or be consumed by it. Asterisk. Asterisk, the Winscott name, was a curse. And tonight Eleanor would decide if it ended with her. Asterisk, the bloodline carried centuries of shadows, whispers of rituals, bargains made in desperation, and a hunger buried beneath the manor that refused to stay silent. The journal left by her great-grandmother wasn't just a record, it was a warning. Sever the ties, or be devoured by them. Asterisk, the house groaned beneath the weight of its own secrets as Eleanor moved deeper into the decaying estate. Her footsteps echoed through the hollow halls like invitations, or maybe like the last steps of the ones who came before. The portraits lining the walls stared down, their faces smudged, their eyes gouged, as if the house itself was trying to forget them. But their silence screamed louder than words. Asterisk, the West Wing was sealed for a reason. The journal whispered of it, the rituals, the chamber, the place where the Winscotts tried to chain the darkness and failed. Asterisk. Eleanor's hand shook as she forced the swollen oak door open. The wood groaned, the air beyond colder than the grave. A narrow stairwell disappeared into the black, the stone steps slick with damp, or something worse. Asterisk, she took a breath. One way down, no way back. Asterisk, the house wasn't just waiting, it was watching, and tonight it wanted an ending. Asterisk, the Winscott curse wasn't a story. It was alive. And now, it wanted her. Asterisk, Eleanor's breath clouded in the freezing air as she descended the slick, crumbling stairs, each step sinking her deeper into the heart of everything her family had hidden and feared. The stone chamber at the bottom wasn't empty. Symbols coiled across the walls, twisting serpents tangled with crosses. The same grotesque emblem, that shadowed the Winscott name for generations. Asterisk a faint. Unnatural glow pulsed from a cracked basin at the center of the room. Ashes, melted wax, remnants of rituals long abandoned or never completed littered the ground. Eleanor's fingers brushed the carved walls, her pulse racing as the weight of her bloodline settled over her like a noose. Final pages weren't just a warning. They were instructions. Asterisk, the ritual demanded blood. It demanded silence. And it demanded her. Asterisk, the wind shifted. The dim light guttered, then vanished, snuffed out by a breath colder than death. In the darkness, a whisper slid past her ear, a voice that didn't belong to the living, ancient, starved, and waiting. Asterisk, the lantern sparked back to life. But she wasn't alone. Shadows pressed in at the edges of her vision. The air pulsed, like the manor itself was breathing, watching Asterisk beyond the cracked walls. The wind screamed through broken glass, carrying the cries of the forgotten. A family devoured by their own sins, in a house that refused to let go. Asterisk Eleanor's choice was simple: break the curse, or become its next victim. Asterisk, the manor wasn't cursed. It was hungry, and it had been waiting. For her, Asterisk Eleanor's breath came shallow as she stood in the cold, suffocating chamber buried beneath Winscott Manor. This wasn't just a room, it was a graveyard of secrets. The carved stone walls pulsed faintly, symbols twisting like snakes. Strangling crosses, faith warped into something rotten and cruel. Asterisk fragments of bone littered the floor. Rusted chains coiled in forgotten corners. Faded scraps of parchment whispered prayers, or were they pleas? Either way, no one had listened. Asterisk Eleanor's fingers hovered over a cracked chalice. Its rim stained dark blood, old and dry, but still heavy with intent. She opened the tattered journal. Its final pages almost lost to time, ink smeared by trembling hands, words fragmented like the minds that wrote them. But one message cut through the chaos. Asterisk, the curse could be broken, but not without sacrifice. Asterisk A. Soul bound willingly to the manor. Trapped here forever. Holding the darkness at bay. Asterisk, it was a choice soaked in blood and consequence. Sever the family's ties to this nightmare. Or walk away and let the shadows claim what they were owed. Asterisk, the walls seemed to breathe around her. The manor was listening, watching, waiting. Asterisk, Eleanor clenched her fists. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. The Winscott legacy ends tonight.
Everyone. Asterisk, the truth was simple. This house never wanted to let them go, and now it wanted her too. Asterisk, Eleanor's heartbeat thundered in her ears as the shadows twisted near the entrance of the hidden chamber. From the suffocating darkness, a figure emerged, pale, spectral, his eyes hollow yet burning with unbearable sorrow. Asterisk, Jonathan Winscott, the last patriarch. The man cursed to linger in the rotting bones of this estate, watching, waiting. Shackled to the same nightmare his family had unleashed. Asterisk, his voice cracked through the stale air. Words carried on regret and decay. He spoke of the beginning, how their bloodline traded faith for forbidden power, how grief poisoned their love, how the darkness fed on their weakness, their ambition, their sins. Asterisk, they hadn't been cursed. They had chosen this, bound by a packed blood tied to shadow, a price paid in silence, in suffering, in lost souls trapped within these walls. Asterisk, but even in his ghostly gaze, Eleanor saw something more, fragile plea, a desperate hope that she, the last Winscott, could be the one to end this. Asterisk, she wasn't just uncovering a forgotten history, she was becoming part of it. The weight of generations crushed her shoulders. The choice cruel and clear. Asterisk faced the darkness. Break the cycle, but pay the price. Asterisk, as the first weak light of dawn clawed through the manor's shattered windows, Eleanor stood tall. The Winscott legacy, their lies, their curse. Asterisk, it ends with me. Asterisk, the fog clung to the ruins like the house itself, refused to let go of its dead. Asterisk, Eleanor stood at the fractured doorway of the Winscott Manor, her pulse loud in the silence. The journal, faded, cracked, stained with time, felt heavier than ever in her hand. It wasn't just ink and paper. It was a map of every mistake, every curse, Every drop of blood this family had buried beneath rotting floors and empty promises. Asterisk. The skeletal branches clawed at the sky as a cold wind whispered through them soft. Voices, lost prayers, the bitter echoes of people who never escaped. Asterisk inside, the house breathed. The marble floors cracked beneath her boots, the walls sagged beneath the weight of forgotten sins, and the shadows. The shadows moved like they remembered her name. Asterisk the Winscott emblem serpents tangled around. Crosses watched from every surface, carved deep into stone, daring her to turn back. But she did. Asterisk her voice wavered as she spoke the ancient words from the journal. The same words whispered by ancestors blinded by fear and arrogance. This ritual wasn't about peace. It was about sacrifice. About cutting the bloodline free. Or bleeding with it. Asterisk and Eleanor? She'd bleed if she had to. But the curse ends here. Asterisk the manor was silent. But it was watching. Asterisk Eleanor stood in the shattered chapel, where prayers had long turned to whispers and stained glass bled crimson light across the floor. The journal lay open on the altar, its pages trembling, as if the house itself breathed beneath her fingers. Asterisk the ritual was never meant for salvation. It was a warning, a choice. Step into the darkness and chain it down. Or walk away and unleash it on the world. Asterisk, the shadows coiled at the edges of the chapel, alive, listening. The cursed blood of the Winscott line pulsed in her veins, pulling her toward a fate older than the broken stones beneath her. Asterisk candles flickered. The manor exhaled, cold, heavy, final. Eleanor spoke the words, her voice steady, though her heart raced like thunder. Asterisk, tonight she would either end this curse or become a part of it. Asterisk, the manor wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was haunted by promises. Promises sealed in blood and broken in shadows. Asterisk, Eleanor knelt before the altar, her breath steady, despite the cold that crept through the ancient stones. The candle flames wavered, throwing long claw-like shadows across the chapel walls. Outside, the shattered stained glass rattled in the wind, carrying the faint sound of forgotten hymns. Something else. A low, mournful whisper that didn't belong to the living. Asterisk, the leather journal lay open before her. The final words written in a trembling hand were clear. To end the curse, blood must answer for blood. Willingly given, or all is lost. Asterisk. The dagger in her hand was colder than the wind. Marked with the serpent coiled around the cross, the Winscott family's mark felt heavier than steel. Asterisk, this was her moment. Walk away, and the curse would fester. Spread face the darkness, and she might never leave this place. But at least it would end with her. Asterisk with a steady hand and a heart full of fear, but not surrender. Eleanor pressed the blade to her palm. Asterisk, the manor watched and waited. Asterisk, the blood hit the cold altar stone, and the manor woke up. Asterisk, a low hum crawled through the chapel walls, rattling the cracked stained glass. Eleanor's heartbeat matched its rhythm. The ancient words spilled. From her lips, words whispered by the wind, etched into her family's cursed journal, words that should never be spoken. Asterisk, the shadows pulsed. They moved. Faces, fleeting, broken, stretched across the stone like echoes of the damned. Ancestors twisted by greed, madness, and sacrifice. Their eyes pleaded. Their mouths warned. But it was too late to stop now. Asterisk, the ground trembled beneath her knees. Dust rained from the broken ceiling, and then the whispers. Twisting, tangling. Voices from beyond the veil, eh? Figure appeared in the chapel doorway, silent, watching, a specter draped and tattered. Ancient robes, the mark of the old Winscott cult, burned into its chest. Its eyes hollow, burning with sorrow and judgment. Eleanor's hand shook, but her voice didn't. She spoke the final words. Steady, unafraid. Asterisk, the specter stopped. Its stare met hers. Behind the sorrow, something else, relief. Asterisk, the manor exhaled. The walls groaned. Asterisk, the suffocating weight. Loosened, not gone. But for the first time in centuries, weaker asterisk, the candle flames stilled. The chapel fell quiet. Asterisk Eleanor lowered the blade, blood still warm on her palm. Asterisk, the curse wasn't broken. Asterisk, but tonight, for the first time, it bled. Asterisk, the curse was weakened, but it wasn't gone, and it never would be. Asterisk, the first pale light of dawn bled through the shattered windows, painting the chapel floor in fractured reds and greens. Eleanor stood alone, her blood still fresh. On the altar stone, her pulse steady, despite the weight pressing down on her chest. Asterisk, the manor wasn't a prison anymore. It was a fortress. But even fortresses fall. The shadows had retreated. For now watching, waiting, patient as death. But Eleanor knew tonight was just the beginning. The ritual bound the darkness, barely. The Winscott legacy demanded a price that never ended. Asterisk, the garden outside lay tangled and rotten. Thorned roses curled in on themselves like withered claws, blackened under the weak morning light. Mist crept along the broken paths, coiling around forgotten gravestones hidden beneath the weeds. Asterisk, Eleanor stepped through the overgrowth, every footstep echoing against ancient stones. The air crackled with something unseen. Promises. Warnings. The whisper of eyes still watching. Asterisk, the curse wasn't gone. The darkness wasn't finished. And neither was she. Asterisk, they all fell. One by one, broken by the curse, they couldn't escape. But Eleanor chose to stand. Asterisk, the Winscotts were names carved into gravestones. Whispered in the manor's rotting walls, Elias, devoured by ambition. Jonathan lost a secret. Rights and madness. And all the others, trapped in a legacy of fear. But tonight changed everything. The ritual was done. The curse was bound. Fragile, yes, like glass stretched thin over a pit of shadows, but bound all the same. Asterisk, the manors. Crumbling halls, once dripping with dread, now pulsed with something. Different. Not peace. Never peace. But purpose? Asterisk, her soul was tethered here now. To the stones. To the shadows. To the restless dead still watching. Waiting. Asterisk, a chill brushed the back of her neck. She turned. Nothing but fog. But she felt them. The lost, the broken, the forgotten, their eyes softer now, but never gone. Asterisk ahead, the path coiled into the unknown, thick with old sins, old scars. But through the cracks in the manor's gloom, faint light bled through, real, fragile, but alive. Asterisk, Eleanor's jaw set, her fists clenched. The darkness would wait. It always did. But so would she. Asterisk, she was the last of the Winscotts, the first to choose the fight. Asterisk, and the shadows. Asterisk. Never be free again. Asterisk. They weren't just a family. They were a warning. Asterisk, for generations. The Winscotts carried more than their name. They carried the curse that came with it. A legacy twisted by ambition, rotted by forbidden knowledge, drowned in shadows older than memory itself. Asterisk, the manor stood as proof. Cracked stone, tangled vines, shattered glass whispering secrets that refused to die. Every corner held echoes of the past. Faith turned to madness. Hope buried beneath despair. Asterisk, but Eleanor. She chose differently. Asterisk, she didn't run. Didn't deny it. She faced the darkness, not to destroy it, but to bind it. To accept what the Winscotts were, what they could still become. Asterisk, the ritual was done. The price paid. The shadows, still watching, still waiting. But they no longer ruled. Asterisk, as the sun clawed its way over the broken hills, its faint light spilled across the ruined estate. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't peace. But it was enough. Enough for her to stand. The Winscott curse wasn't broken. Not yet. But for the first time, it was fighting back. And so was she. Some families leave. Behind fortune, the Winscotts left behind a curse. Asterisk, for over a century, their name whispered through the cracks of the old manor, tangled in shadows, soaked in sacrifice. But this was never just about bricks, blood, or bones. It was a pact, one sealed, beyond the reach of the living, binding generations to a darkness older than memory. Asterisk, Eleanor Winscott could have walked away. Most did, but not her. She stayed. She bled, asterisk, and she bound the shadows. For now, asterisk, the manor still stands, broken, forgotten, alive, its crumbling walls, whisper of power, of sorrow, of choices that ripple through time like cracks in stone. But Eleanor's stand wasn't just defiance, it was a reminder. Asterisk legacies aren't written in tombstones. They're carved in courage. Asterisk the curse still lingers watching, waiting, patient as ever. But for the first time, so does hope. Fragile, flickering, real. Asterisk, and as the wind stirs dead leaves along forgotten paths, remember. Asterisk the darkest shadows. They don't haunt ancient ruins. They haunt us. Some stories end with happily ever after. The Winscott story never ended at all. For generations, their name has been buried beneath whispers, beneath rotting wood, beneath the shadows that crawl when the sun dies. The manor stands, broken, silent, watching, stones soaked with forgotten sins. Its halls heavy with the weight of choices made long before you were born. Asterisk Eleanor Winscott knows the truth now. The darkness, it never leaves. It waits. It watches. And sometimes, it wins. Asterisk. But tonight, it didn't. Asterisk the binding is done. The shadows held, not banished. The house cracked, not fallen. The story paused, not finished. Asterisk, because curses don't end. They sleep. Asterisk, and when the wind howls, when the fog curls around forgotten graves, when your heart stumbles in the dark. Asterisk, remember the real shadows? They're not out there. They're in here.